Hey everybody, it's Charlie. So I know that I've talked with some of you guys about the class that I took and some of the counseling materials that were covered in the class, and several of you expressed interest in also learning that material for use at the Mustard Seed. Dell and Elizabeth agreed to let me share this information as a form of staff development. However, we thought it might be helpful given our time limitations to accomplish some of it the same way we do the staff journal, to record an audio message. So, this is the first one. I'm also going to give you guys a handout so that you have something physical to look at. So, as we all know, one of our goals at the Mustard Seed is to continually grow in our capacity to care for the seedsters. So this audio clip and possible future clips, if you guys feel that this is helpful, it's a small part of that goal to grow us as caregivers. Just in case anybody wonders, I'm not sending these as a way to point out deficiencies or correct anyone's mistakes. Not at all. If that were the case, I'd be the first one on the list for needing correction. Truly, just because I'm presenting this information doesn't mean I'm good at it. The truth is that I greatly respect each one of you and the job that you do, and I'm so pleased that the teachers get to benefit from your care, and that I get to benefit from watching how you care, and I get to learn from you. These staff development materials are simply a way to help us continue doing well and to grow in what we're already doing right, to keep heading in that same direction. As we know, learning to love people well is a process, and we need help in that process. Learning to really see and understand people and act for their well-being, that takes help from the Holy Spirit and a lot of time and practice. These things are mostly going to consist of light counseling materials relevant to what we do every day. And all of the seedsters are so different, and so are the situations we encounter. So the information I'm going to present will have to be applied not mechanically, but with regard to the varying needs of each encounter. Also, some of the materials might seem to be irrelevant to interacting with the seedsters, but I'm going to include it anyway because we also care for their family members. And it might also help us in situations that we encounter with volunteers or one another, and actually all the people we encounter every day. So, however, I don't want the scope to be too broad. It's really important to me, and I'm sure it is to you as well, that this information is truly helpful and practical and usable every day. I don't want to waste your time. So, after this is over, any feedback is welcome. I'd love to improve this process and make this as helpful as possible. Also, I realize that audio messages may not be your preferred learning style, so if you want to discuss these things face-to-face, just let me know. So thank you for your time, friends, and it's really a pleasure and one heck of a wild ride tending God's flock with you. All right, so the first topic I thought would be good to cover is listening. And you might be wondering why I'm sending you a recording about something so ordinary and simple. Well, it's because what I mean by listening is more than just hearing the words coming out of a person's mouth. What I mean by listening, whether we're in a caregiving setting like ours or in any relationship, is more comprehensive than just hearing. It's a way of being with a person, being available to a person, on purpose, in love, and really trying to see them. Some people call this attending or skilled listening. And by listening in love this way, we're helping create the conditions for God to move in the lives of the people around us. There's a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer from his book Life Together. The first service that one owes to others in the fellowship consists in listening to them. It is God's love for us that He not only gives us His word, but also lends us His ear. So does His work that we do for our brother when we learn to listen to Him. Christians, especially ministers, forget that listening can be a greater service than speaking. The ministry of listening has been committed to them by Him who Himself is the great listener, and whose work they should share. We should listen with the ears of God that we may speak the word of God. It's a great quote. I love it. So listening is not easy, guys, and it's not always intuitive, and we can all learn to do it better. I certainly can. It's something that we all crave, to be listened to and to be understood. And it's one of the best ways to love another person. It's far superior to speaking. And it's really an essential skill for all caregiving and friendship. And I say skill on purpose because it's more than just a capacity or a quality of character. There are actual practices and habits that we can foster and incorporate into every interaction to develop the skill of listening. So as we go through these various recordings, we'll cover some of those. The first one that we're going to look at is Carl Rogers and his 6 conditions necessary for the growth of another person. And so I've titled this one, Attending or Listening in Love to Create the Conditions of Growth. Carl Rogers was a psychologist and a therapist in the mid-20th century, and he identified 6 conditions necessary for the growth of another person in a caregiving or therapeutic relationship. And more than just allowing for growth, Rogers insisted that when these conditions are present, a person will naturally gravitate toward growth. And while he intended these conditions to be used in a clinical setting, they're beneficial in any setting we might find ourselves. We can create these conditions in any relationship and any conversation, even with a stranger. And in our context, creating these conditions in our interactions with the sisters or their families or other staff can do a world of good and create space for God's love to reach them, even if we're not doing actual therapy. So some of these ideas are a little technical, but the ideas expressed here are worth the mental effort, I promise. And I'll do my best to explain them clearly. Perhaps the overall takeaway is that Carl Rogers is encouraging us to adopt a disposition towards those around us that produces the maximum benefit in the other person. All right, so the first condition is called therapist-client psychological contact. That's just a big fancy phrase that means for positive growth to occur, there needs to be a relationship present between the therapist and the client. And from here on out, I'm just going to say, for therapist, I'll say helper, and for client, I'll say helpee. Anyway, this bears out in the science as well. Researchers have shown that the most important factor for growth and healing in the therapeutic setting isn't the expertise of the counselor or the type of therapy being performed, but the positive relationship between the helper and the helpee. The second condition is called client incongruence or vulnerability. This just means that there's a difference between who the helpee thinks that they are and who they'd like to be. This difference between how they see themselves, or their perceived self, and their ideal self, this difference causes vulnerability and anxiety and stress, and the helpee is often not even aware of this difference. This difference is also called an incongruence. That's why the condition is called client incongruence or vulnerability. And just so you know, perfect congruence, quote unquote, is an impossible ideal. In other words, all of us have these incongruences. Therapist congruence or genuineness. This is the third condition. Now, despite the fact that it uses the term congruence, it does not mean that the helper is free of incongruence or inconsistencies between who they think they are and who they'd like to be. This simply means that the helper is being real and genuine in their relationship with the helpee. People can tell and are turned off when others are being fake with them. The fourth condition is called therapist unconditional positive regard. And this is one of my favorite things. Each person we come into contact with will have positive experiences and negative experiences. They'll have attractive characteristics and ugly characteristics. And for the helpee to feel safe, accepted, and able to grow, the helper must create an atmosphere of unconditional positive regard, which simply means that there's an atmosphere that communicates to the helpee that they are accepted and regarded positively by us without any conditions or judgment. And it's in this way that the helpee can be their true selves with us without fear that we'll view them negatively. A couple of side notes here. Some people object to this, saying, well, some people have done some really terrible things, and it's true. But there is a difference between viewing a person negatively and viewing what they've done negatively. Another side note, often, we see people develop defense mechanisms and annoying characteristics from the hurts that have been inflicted by not being treated in this way by other people. In fact, often the people who are the hardest to like and be around, it's those people who have never been in a relationship with this condition present. The fifth condition is called therapist empathy. We've all heard the word empathy, and it just means understanding and sharing the feelings of another person. Thus, this condition exists when the helper seeks to place him or herself into the experience of the helpee. And of course, this needs to be done in a way that doesn't involve us in an emotionally unhealthy way. The sixth condition is called client perception. This just means that it's important for the helpee to recognize and experience, to some degree, the unconditional positive regard and empathy that the helper is demonstrating by his or her words and actions. They need to feel it, They need to experience it to some degree. Whew. So we got through it. Again, it was technical, but it's beautiful. I'll quickly summarize them again. The therapist-client psychological contact it just means that there needs to be a relationship between the helper and the helpee. Client incongruence just means that there's a difference between the way they see themselves and the way they'd like to be. Therapist congruence or genuineness just means that the helper is being real. They're not being fake or pretentious. They're being real with the person they're talking to. Unconditional positive regard simply means creating an atmosphere where there is acceptance and non-judgment. Therapist empathy simply means trying to share and understand the feelings of the other person. And client perception simply means that it's important for the client to know to some degree that these conditions are present and then they are experiencing empathy and unconditional positive regard. So in a nutshell, these are the conditions that we're going for in our relationships with the people at the Mustard Seed. And thankfully, when we practice these skills and God's grace creates this disposition towards others within us, the conditions are present whether we're having an hour-long conversation or a 30-second conversation. And as we all know, sometimes our conversations with the Caesars are very short. So all of this still might be a little heady, though. So maybe an example will help. Let's look at Jesus. What attracts me the most about Jesus is that he interacts with me, and he interacts with all of us in this way. He perfectly and lovingly attends to people, which is why he's so magnetic and healing. He's the perfect listener. And so think about it in the context of these conditions. He insists on a friendship with us, a relationship. He helps us bloom into our ideal selves. He's completely real with us, genuine. Instead of judging us, he accepts us and he loves us and regards us positively, whether we deserve it or not. He listens to us and makes it clear to us that he empathetically understands our experiences and feels our pain. And it's important to him that we not just understand conceptually that he feels this way about us and treats us this way, but that we actually experience it, that we feel his love for us. And it's only in this experience of Jesus that we can truly grow inside and out. His love creates these same conditions for growth identified by Rogers. And when we treat people this way, they are to some degree experiencing Jesus' love for them, whether they realize it or not. And in treating other people this way, we're allowing for this same growth in them. Thanks for listening, guys. I pray for all of us that God would help us to become these kind of listeners, full of love and grace, and that we would also learn to be gracious with ourselves when we fail to be this kind of listener. Because sometimes it's really hard when Jerry's going on for the 5th minute about the same darn thing. Anyway, you guys are awesome.